She was an elevator operator. She had her ups and downs. She got so high so very fast, it took her all day to come down. I'm gonna send you straight to her right now. She's pretty dizzy, but I'll get along somehow. Alright, hello there, thrill seekers, and if you can hear the dogs, I got two of them today. There's Ziggy, our old pal Ziggy. Ziggy, say hi to the folks. And somewhere in the yard is FICO, my sister-in-law's dog. They are real estate agents, her and her husband. And FICO sounds like Fido, so hence the name. And he's in there he's out here somewhere. The song you just heard was a little bit of a song called Elevator Operator, originally by Gene Clark of The Byrds. And I'm going to put a music video up for it later today, so you can look forward to that. Ziggy, ooh. All right. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things that I got in the comments section of this video. Oh, there's FICO. I can kind of see him out behind me somewhere there. I can see him in the monitor. Anyway, Ziggy, hush, buddy. So, the two comments were very nice. Somebody's going to have to explain to me how the email thingy on iPhones works, because I usually send things to myself on my iPhone. And I checked before I got out here to see if both of the emails that I sent myself were there, and they were. Now I get out here, and one of them is gone. So I'm going to have to read it off of the email program on my laptop, which means my eye line is going to go all wonky because I'm not looking where I'm supposed to be. Anyway, so the first comment is no disrespect, but this rant reminds me of how lousy enlightenment is defined in Zen, and people struggle to make sense of their experiences. I can only recommend to study deeply certain selected strains of Theravada, that's an early form of Buddhism, to get a detailed catalog-esque knowledge of states and experiences instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. Also, the idea that Buddha was not fully enlightened all the time is grotesque. That's the first, what do we call those? Comments. That's the first comment. The second comment he left is quite long, so I'm not going to read it all, but it's very nice. And he talks about how he had a dream. I'm assuming it's a he. I'm sorry if it's not. That had a breakthrough in his practice, and he thanked me for the breakthrough. And there's a lot of stuff here, but let me see if I can find the salient parts. He says, it allowed me for replicable and predictable study of states, and gave him language and definitions to study and make sense of these stages and states of practice, and so on. So when I was thinking about how to answer this on a video, I went back and looked at some of my earlier videos, and I found that I used the very portion of my book, The Other Side of Nothing, that I'm intending to use in this. I used it almost exactly 2 years ago on another video, but the subject was slightly different. So what I want to talk about here is these levels of enlightenment. So in a lot of traditions within Buddhism, I don't know if it's a lot, but in certain traditions in Buddhism, there is this idea of various levels and stages of awakening. And these are delineated, as my commenter says, in, very detailed form, telling you what to expect and what's going to happen and what to look for and so forth and so on. Sometimes in the literature, it's you're kind of categorized as a stream enterer who has eliminated identity view, doubt, wrong grasp of rules and observances, will be reborn at most 7 times among humans and devas. That's nice. Ziggy, hush. Once returner, has eliminated same fetters as Stream Enterer, but also weakens sensual lust, hatred, and delusion. Will have no more than one more rebirth in the sense sphere realm. 3 is a non-returner, has eliminated the same fetters as a once returner, and has eliminated 2 more fetters, sensual lust and ill will. Wait a minute, that was up there before. Anyway, will have spontaneous birth in the form realm. And then finally, the Arhant has eliminated the 5 lower fetters mentioned above, as well as the 5 higher fetters, which are the desire for existence in the form realm, desire for existence in the formless realm, conceit, restlessness, ignorance. And this person will not have another rebirth in the form realm. Now, for the most part, these are kind of ignored in the Zen stream, as my commenter points out, and he says that he's studied Zen for some time, so he kind of knows what he's talking about there, and that he appreciates these. And I wanted to explain why I think the Zen stream of Buddhism has mostly dropped these things. There are some references to it. There is in Dogen's writings something about the Bhikshu of the fourth effect, but he really doesn't emphasize this stuff very much. So here is what I wrote in my book, The Other Side of Nothing, about this subject. So I'm just going to read it to you now, and then I'll say what I can say about it. There's Hey, Fico. Hey, Fico. Say hi to the folks. That's Fico. That's the other dog. I'm dog sitting for the week. Okay, here's what I wrote. In early Buddhism, right samadhi was described as follows. Samadhi is a kind of a state of meditation. There is the case where a monk, quite withdrawn from sensuality, withdrawn from unskillful mental qualities, enters and remains in the first jhana. And jhana is the original, maybe not the original, but one of the earlier forms of the word that eventually became the word Zen. So you could maybe think of it as the first Zen, if you want. It just kind of generically means meditation, but it has a kind of a more specific technical meaning in the way I'm going to use it right now. Okay, and he enters the first jhana, rapture and pleasure born from withdrawal, accompanied by direct thought and evaluation. With the stilling of directed thoughts and evaluations, he enters and remains in the second jhana, rapture and pleasure born of composure, unification of awareness, free from directed thought and evaluation, internal assurance. With the fading of rapture, that's a great song, he remains equanimous, mindful, and alert. I don't know how to pronounce equanimous. Equanimous? I don't know. So he remains equanimous, mindful, and alert, and senses pleasure with the body. He enters and remains in the third jhana, so we're up to number 3, of which the noble ones declare equanimous and mindful. He has a pleasant abiding. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, as with the earlier disappearance of elation and distress, he enters and remains in the fourth jhana, purity of equanimity and mindfulness, neither pleasure nor pain. This is called right concentration, aka samadhi. Okay, and here's what I wrote about that. That's a quote from, I didn't copy down what I quoted that from, but it's some kind of translation of the Pali Canon, the early Buddhist sutras. And here's what I wrote about that. Okay, I already told you this. Jhana is the Pali pronunciation of the word dhyana, which is usually translated as meditation. And, so since this is the case, you might expect Zen folks to be all about jhana states as described above. In fact, though, in the Zen tradition, we rarely talk about jhanas, at least not in the sense of there being distinct levels. As you can figure out from context, in older forms of Buddhism, the various jhanas were different states or levels of meditation. In this example, they seem to lead from one to the other, getting better and better, until at last you end up in the fourth jhana, which is the bestest jhana of them all. And Dogen writes about this and calls it the fourth effect. Although I should go and study that, and maybe the next video I'll talk to you about what he says about that, because my memory is crap, but I can't remember. But I don't remember him being very affirming of the whole idea. Anyway, let's just continue. Come on, doggies. Doggies. The problem with this system for me is that it involves comparing things that cannot be compared. How do you judge which number jhana you're in? I suppose you could compare it to the descriptions you've heard or read of that jhana. For example, you could ask yourself if you're feeling rapture and pleasure born from withdrawal. If the answer is yes, then you'd know you were in jhana number 1. But what does rapture and pleasure from withdrawal feel like? I certainly don't know. Maybe I could guess based on what sort of feelings and images words like rapture, pleasure, and withdrawal evoke. But then I'm really just comparing my actual state at this moment with my imagination. Or maybe if I've accomplished jhanas number 1 and 2, leaving aside how I'd know that I did that for the moment, I could compare my... Hey, dog. I could compare my memories of those states with whatever I'm feeling at this moment. If I'm not feeling what I remember feeling in those states, and if instead I feel equanimous and mindful and have a pleasant abiding, I might declare that I'm in jhana number 3. What's a pleasant abiding, you ask? I'll be darned if I know. I'm not even sure what being equanimous feels like. I guess it feels kind of equal all over, or something. You tell me. I suppose I could make a vague guess as to what feeling neither pleasure nor pain would be like, but if I had to guess at that one, I'd guess that it feels just kind of normal. Like maybe the feeling I get on a day that's not too hot or cold while sitting on a couch that's not very nice but also not too bad and watching a TV show that I neither enjoy very much nor hate. But how would I be certain if I'd accomplished jhanas 1 and 2 and hadn't made a mistake? I guess I could ask my teacher. Which would mean I could describe to her my memories of how I felt at a particular time in the past. This would invoke in her images and feelings associated with the words I used, and she could compare those images and feelings to memories of her own past states of jhana, and use that comparison to guess if I'd reached those states too. Then she could either confirm my meditative accomplishments or deny them. And that's what I wrote, and that's how I feel about this whole thing. It's just comparing memories or images or ideas to a real state at this moment. And that's where it starts and stops for me. I can't see any way around that problem. So you can't really judge it. And I think this is why in the Zen stream of things, we've kind of just dropped that. Because these states and things, they exist in earlier forms of Buddhism, and they're very... As Buddhism kind of grew after the Buddha died, there was a time in Indian philosophy where they were just trying to define everything more and more and more specifically, and so you get this explosion of literature in which these kind of things are described in excruciating detail, and I tell you, whenever I've tried to read those things, I cannot get through them. It's just painful. So they go into painful detail about all these things you're supposed to experience and whatnot, and to me, it all seems like a waste of time. I think that's what the people in the Zen stream felt as well. They just felt like, well, there's this stuff, and you can refer to it, and they don't repudiate it. You know, the Zen folks don't tell you don't read those scriptures. You know, and sometimes they even reference those scriptures. But for the most part, they're not worrying about the various states of attainment. And that's the way it is for me too. I can't be concerned about that. One of the ways this concern manifests itself, though, is in people stressing out about this stuff. And this is another comment I got on the same video, in my previous video, and it goes, this really made me think. It's kind of stressful to keep striving for this end of seeking to have an abiding enlightenment state. Sometimes I'll get a feeling of oneness, I guess, when looking at the beauty of trees and nature or during meditation. But I've heard stories that if you're enlightened, you feel like one with kitchen appliances, lamps, and literally everything in existence. And they say if you look at someone, they become like they're actually yourself. But I've never experienced oneness like that. Just a strong love for others, compassion, and more happiness, etc. That's why I think I'm not in an abiding, awakened state. I guess that's what it's supposed to be. And that's the kind of thing you get. You get people kind of stressing out or measuring themselves. I heard a story once from some people who were at Tassajara, the Zen monastery up in Northern California, pointing up for north. Up isn't north. I think north is that way. Anyway, doesn't matter. But there's people... No, wait a minute. North must be behind me because that's where the mountains are. Anyway, doesn't matter. Somebody had come there from a different meditation tradition and was quizzing various people at Tassajara as to what level of attainment they had achieved. And the folks there, being Zen students, had no idea what level of attainment they'd achieved, because we don't worry about what level of attainment we've achieved. And I just think that's just... There's this... You know, when you go to Zen monasteries, there's this kind of tendency, which I personally don't like, wherein people will use special phrases that are only used there. And one of the phrases that they like to use at Tassajara is comparing mind. And apparently Shunryu Suzuki, the initial guy who founded what became Tassajara, talked about comparing mind and why we should avoid comparing mind. And that's it. That's what you get. You get comparing mind. You get, I'm comparing myself to somebody else, and you're making it sort of like a race, you know, like this guy's way ahead of me and this guy's way behind me, and here's where I am now. But you are where you are, and you are exactly what you are. And what you are is the state in this moment, and what sort of attainment you have in the future, or what sort of attainment you had in the past, is kind of irrelevant. Like, I've talked about these sort of strange experiences or interesting experiences I've had in Zazen, and one of the traps is that, and this is, I've been prone to this myself, and I've watched this in action in my own mind, is that once you kind of come down from the high of the experience, you're kind of wanting it again. So it becomes a little bit like an addiction. You know, like a drug addict wanting his next fix. You know, you want your next fix of enlightenment. So what you're doing is missing this moment right now because you're fixated on that enlightenment experience you had in the past, or the enlightenment experience you might have in the future, but you're not looking at what's going on right now. And the irony of the whole thing is that any sort of enlightenment experience worth the name enlightenment experience is the experience of this very moment in its pure, unadulterated form. So it doesn't matter if you look at a kitchen appliance and you feel like I'm the dishwasher, or I feel like I am Ziggy, or whatever, or I feel like, you know, I am those flowers out there and I get lost in the flowers and all that. You know, those kind of experiences are nice, but Dogen says that even doubt and confusion are a manifestation of awakening. So he's taking it all the way and saying even this state you have that you think is confused and doubtful and muddy and whatever is also a manifestation of awakening. But he also continues to recommend doing Zazen practice, and he doesn't poo-poo or disparage those kind of states, because those kind of states can be instructive and can be useful, but it's a really important thing that you don't get stuck on them and you don't keep trying to rank them. So that's what I have to say about that. I hope that was somehow useful. If you want to help me buy useful things for my life, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There's where you will find my PayPal and Patreon links. You can also, if you're watching this on YouTube, find those links right below in the description if you don't want to go over. I should say that because some people think you have to go there, so I'll start saying that. They're right there below in the description, so you don't actually have to go to that link. Anyway, that's my main way of making a living, but as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. Okay, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey Ziggy, how you doing there under the table there with the guitar over you? Hanging out there? You enjoy hanging out when I'm doing my videos? Let's see if we can find what Fico's doing. Hey Fico! Hey Fico! Say hi to the folks. There you go. Dog cameos for the day. Alright, we'll see you both. Bye-bye.